5 Stoic Rules to Emotionally Detach from Someone. Marcus Aurelius Stoicism. 1. Stop expecting them to be different. One of the greatest causes of emotional suffering is expecting someone to become the person you want them to be instead of accepting who they actually are. Many people spend months or years waiting for a change that never comes. They hope the other person will become more loving, more loyal, more attentive, or more committed. These expectations create a fantasy that often has little connection to reality. Marcus Aurelius taught that peace begins when we stop fighting reality and start accepting it. The truth is simple: people reveal themselves through their actions, not through our wishes. When someone repeatedly shows you who they are, believe them. Emotional attachment becomes painful when you cling to the possibility of who they might become rather than recognizing who they already are. Stoicism encourages us to observe life clearly without letting emotions distort our judgment. Instead of asking why someone isn't treating you the way you deserve, ask whether their actions align with your values. This shift in thinking can transform your emotional state. You stop waiting. You stop hoping for miracles. You stop exhausting yourself trying to change another person. The moment you accept that their choices belong to them, and your peace belongs to you, a heavy burden begins to lift. True emotional freedom starts when you release unrealistic expectations and embrace reality exactly as it is. 2. Stop seeking validation from them. Many people become emotionally attached because they unknowingly make another person responsible for their self-worth. A text message makes them feel valuable. A compliment makes them feel attractive. Attention makes them feel important. Silence, however, makes them feel rejected. This is a dangerous position because your confidence becomes dependent on something you cannot control. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that a person's value comes from their character, not from the opinions of others. Yet many people spend their lives chasing approval. They seek reassurance that they are lovable, worthy, and enough. The problem is that no amount of validation from another person can permanently fill an internal void. If you do not believe in your own worth, you will always need someone else to convince you. Stoicism teaches the opposite approach. Build such a strong foundation within yourself that praise and criticism lose their power over your emotions. When someone appreciates you, be grateful. When they ignore you, remain steady. Your value does not increase because someone loves you, and it does not decrease because someone walks away. The moment you stop looking to others for proof of your worth, emotional detachment becomes easier. You no longer need constant attention to feel complete. Instead, you carry your confidence within you, and that confidence cannot be taken away by another person's choices. 3. Focus on what you can control. At the heart of Stoicism lies one of the most powerful lessons ever taught: focus only on what you can control. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that peace comes from directing energy toward his own thoughts, actions, and character rather than worrying about external events. When it comes to emotional attachment, many people obsess over things completely outside their control. They wonder why someone hasn't called. They analyze every message. They speculate about what the other person is thinking. They spend countless hours trying to understand decisions that belong to someone else. This habit creates anxiety because the mind becomes trapped in a battle it can never win. Stoicism teaches us to redirect our attention inward. You cannot control whether someone loves you. You cannot control whether they stay. You cannot control their feelings, choices, or priorities. What you can control is how you respond. You can control your habits, your goals, your attitude, and your growth. The more energy you invest in these areas, the stronger and more independent you become. Emotional detachment happens naturally when your focus shifts from chasing another person's attention to building your own life. Instead of wondering what they are doing, ask yourself what meaningful action you can take today. Every moment spent improving yourself is a moment reclaimed from emotional dependence. 4. Accept that everything is temporary. One of the hardest truths to accept is that nothing lasts forever. Relationships change. Friendships fade. People leave. Circumstances evolve. Marcus Aurelius understood that life itself is temporary, and because of this, he encouraged people to appreciate what they have without becoming attached to keeping it forever. Emotional suffering often comes from resisting this reality. We want special moments to last forever. We want people to remain exactly as they are. We want relationships to stay unchanged. Yet life does not work that way. Everything moves, changes, and eventually ends. The Stoics did not view this as a reason for sadness. Instead, they saw it as a reason to value the present moment. When you accept impermanence, you stop clinging. You stop acting from fear. You stop trying to force people to stay in your life. You learn to appreciate them while they are present and release them when they are gone. This mindset creates tremendous emotional freedom. You realize that your happiness cannot depend on something temporary. It must come from within. The more you accept the temporary nature of life, the less fearful you become of loss. And when fear of loss disappears, emotional attachment loses much of its power. You begin to live with gratitude instead of desperation, and that change transforms everything. 5. Build a life that does not revolve around one person. Imagine a man named Adrian. For years, his happiness depended entirely on one person. Every morning, the first thing he did was check his phone. Every night, the last thing he thought about was whether that person cared about him. His mood rose and fell based on their messages. If they replied quickly, he felt important. If they ignored him, he felt worthless. Without realizing it, he had built his entire emotional world around someone else's attention. At first, Adrian believed this was love. He believed that constantly thinking about someone was proof of devotion. He believed that sacrificing his peace for another person was noble. But as the months passed, he became exhausted. He stopped focusing on his goals. He neglected friendships. He abandoned hobbies he once enjoyed. Slowly, his world became smaller and smaller until one person occupied almost every corner of his mind. Marcus Aurelius warned against this kind of dependence. He understood that when a person's happiness is attached to something outside their control, suffering becomes inevitable. The Stoics believed that every human being should stand firmly on their own foundation. Relationships should add joy to life, but they should never become the entire source of it. One day, Adrian received news he had feared for months. The person he cared about decided to move on with their life. There was no dramatic argument. No explanation that satisfied him. No final conversation that gave him closure. They simply chose a different path. Adrian felt as if the ground beneath him had disappeared. Everything he had built emotionally was tied to someone who was no longer there. For weeks, he replayed memories in his mind. He searched for mistakes. He questioned every decision he had made. He wondered what he could have done differently. The more he searched for answers, the more confused he became. Every day felt heavier than the last. Then one evening, while sitting alone in a quiet park, he remembered something he had once read from Marcus Aurelius. The emperor wrote that a person's life is shaped by the thoughts they choose to entertain. Adrian realized that he had spent years entertaining thoughts that made him weaker. Every day, he had trained himself to focus on someone else instead of focusing on his own growth. That realization changed everything. The next morning, Adrian decided to do something different. Instead of checking his phone immediately after waking up, he went for a walk. It felt strange at first. His mind constantly drifted back to the person he missed. Yet he continued walking. He noticed the sunrise. He noticed the cool air. For the first time in months, his attention was not completely consumed by another human being. The following day, he repeated the habit. Then again the next day. Slowly, he began reclaiming pieces of himself that he had forgotten existed. He started reading books again. Years earlier, he had loved learning about philosophy, history, and psychology. But during his emotional attachment, he had lost interest in almost everything except the person he desired. Now he returned to those interests. Each page reminded him that the world was much larger than his personal disappointment. Weeks later, he joined a fitness club. The first workout was difficult. His body felt weak and unmotivated. However, he remembered a Stoic principle: growth often begins with discomfort. Every day he showed up. Every day he became slightly stronger. What surprised him most was not the physical improvement, but the mental transformation. He began developing confidence that came from his own efforts rather than someone else's approval. As months passed, Adrian noticed something remarkable. The person who once occupied every thought no longer dominated his mind. They still appeared occasionally, but their presence felt different. The memories no longer controlled him. They were simply part of his past. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that every human being has duties and responsibilities greater than personal desires. Adrian finally understood what this meant. He had spent years making one person the center of his universe when he should have been building a meaningful life of his own. He began volunteering in his community. He helped young students with their studies. He listened to people facing challenges. He offered support whenever he could. Through service, he discovered a powerful truth. The more he focused on contributing to the lives of others, the less obsessed he became with what he had lost. Many people believe emotional detachment means becoming cold or uncaring. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Detachment means caring deeply while refusing to lose yourself. It means loving people without making them responsible for your happiness. It means appreciating their presence without becoming dependent on it. Think about your own life for a moment. How much of your happiness depends on one person? How many dreams have you postponed while waiting for their attention? How many opportunities have you ignored because your focus remained fixed on someone who may not even be thinking about you? These questions can be uncomfortable, but they are necessary. Growth begins with honesty. If one person's actions have the power to destroy your peace, then your emotional foundation may be standing in the wrong place. The Stoics believed that every person should cultivate a rich inner life. They encouraged learning, self-discipline, meaningful work, strong friendships, and service to others. These pursuits create a life that remains fulfilling regardless of who enters or leaves it. Adrian eventually realized that the greatest lesson from his experience was not about the person he lost. It was about the person he had neglected, himself. For years, he had invested all his energy into maintaining a connection with someone else. Very little energy remained for his own development. Once he shifted that focus inward, everything began to change. He became healthier, more confident, more disciplined, more peaceful. The happiness he once searched for in another person slowly emerged from within. This is the final Stoic rule: build a life so meaningful that no single person becomes the center of it. Love people. Appreciate them. Enjoy their presence. But never make them the foundation of your identity. Your purpose must be bigger than any relationship. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, faced wars, endured betrayal, and suffered personal loss. Yet he consistently returned to the same principle: focus on developing your character. Everything else is temporary. Character remains. The person you are struggling to detach from may leave. They may stay. They may change. They may not. None of these outcomes should determine whether you live a meaningful life. Your mission is larger than your attachment. Your future is larger than your disappointment. Your potential is larger than your pain. The moment you begin building a life filled with purpose, growth, discipline, and self-respect, emotional detachment stops feeling impossible. You no longer chase people because your life is moving forward. You no longer beg for attention because your confidence comes from within. You no longer fear being alone because you have become someone whose own company is enough. And that is the freedom Marcus Aurelius wanted every person to discover. If you found this Stoic lesson valuable, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Join our growing community of people committed to building inner strength, emotional resilience, and wisdom. Together, we can learn the timeless principles that lead to a calmer mind, a stronger character, and a more meaningful life.